if you can get your income sourced in such a way that it's going to allow you to have cash flow that permits you to live the life you would choose to live if money were no object. And it's not that we're super wealthy, we're very good stewards over what we do have. And it allows us to give, not just of our money, but of our time and our talent. And time and talent are frequently much more valuable than money, especially when you're in a giving situation.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wealth with Purpose podcast. This is another beautiful day. It's a beautiful Wednesday today as we record. And I have with me my good friend, Augie. How are you, my friend?
I am terrific. Thank you so much.
Good. Augie, how do I don't want to mess up your last name. Is Augie Byllott? Did I say right?
It's Byllott. Yeah.
Byllott. Dang it. I messed
It's a perfect name for real estate.
Buy a lot, right?
That's right. Buy a lot, build on it, sell it, whatever.
Well, I know Augie from, I believe we met at Dealmaker Conference, which is a real estate conference.
Hmm.
And he's not the typical investor. He's an investor, in my personal opinion, where he's more devoted to helping those in need, which is why, Augie, you're one of the people that I look up to. I have you up there, for me to reach your level. Um, and the reason why is because we'll talk about it in the podcast, but Augie works with Share the Love, which I'll let you speak on it. But first, let's, for those that don't know you, who's Augie? In a brief 3 minute uh, uh, conversation, who is Augie for those that don't know you?
Well, I've been a banker, a pastor, mostly a deacon more than a pastor, but I have pastored some flocks.
Hmm.
But I've been a real estate entrepreneur for probably the last 20 years. And that has allowed me to put myself in a position where I get to live my legacy.
Mm.
I know that sounds like a big claim, but I think the Lord has been guiding my steps longer than I've realized. And as I look back over my shoulder, I can kind of see little turns in the road that have allowed today to happen. And today I really focus on providing the gift of mobility to people around the world who have neither the means nor the access through a nonprofit called Share the Love. And that really came about, as I was building my business. A good friend of mine actually founded Share the Love, and he hit me up for a donation in 2009 before it was even an official nonprofit. So I donated 2 wheelchairs, and I figured that would be it. And then every year I'd give him a couple of wheelchairs. Lo and behold, as my businesses grew, he kept inviting me on these real estate distribution trips. And I kept saying, no, I'm too busy. I've got all this stuff going on. And here's a bigger check. And eventually I actually started supporting Share the Love through my events. I was doing real estate education and training, as well as my own real estate portfolio. And we started raising money. And the strangest thing happened. We were very successful, I guess, in our second or third year of raising money. I was hoping to raise $7,500 in one weekend. And it was funny because it was a 3-day event. And I guess it was halfway through the event, Saturday morning,
Hmm.
we had only raised $2,500 against a goal of 7,500, and I was just dejected, thinking, "What am I doing wrong here?" And it was at lunch, because at lunch they would kind of sequester me so I could save my voice because I was teaching for 3 days straight, and usually by the end of the last day I had no voice. And I was kind of having a conversation with God, and the thoughts were going through my head, and it was, "What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do?" And I kept answering, raise money for wheelchairs, raise money for wheelchairs, raise money for wheelchairs. And finally, it was like a divine download. I'm here to raise wheelchairs. So after lunch, we went back and started counting wheelchairs instead of dollars. and it caused an amazing metamorphosis
Mm.
in generosity in the room. So by the last session of the last day before I started, I was, giving people updates on how many wheelchairs, and we were at 183 wheelchairs.
Wow.
And one of my team members in the back of the room yelled, "Wait, I just got a text from somebody in the audience, and they said if they can bring their daughter on a distribution trip, he'll donate 17 chairs and make it an even 200." And now I'm like, oh my goodness.
No pressure, right?
The whole room exploded. And I said, of course. Are you kidding? And so, long story short, we raised $30,000. I called my buddy, Glenn Mather, who is the founder of Share the Love.
Hmm.
And I'm like bursting. And he said, "That's great. You only need $12,000 more for a full container." And he knows how to push my buttons. So literally, it was October, and this was, I guess, 2017, maybe
Hmm.
2016. And he said, you know, "You only need $12,000 more." Well, that was Sunday afternoon as I was driving home from the event. And by Friday, I had called enough of my real estate buddies. I said, "Hey, it's October. You need a tax deduction. Can I put you down for 2,000, 3,000, or 5,000?" And we had our container of wheelchairs.
Wow.
And and that led to our first distribution trip, and it was all real estate investors.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, I'm also a husband, a father, and a grandfather. That grandfather thing, I never thought was going to happen, and it did, and it's the greatest job in the world. So I'm at a point in life where I'm truly able to live my legacy because the things we did in the past through real estate have positioned us to have income where I'm no longer trading hours for dollars. I
Mhm.
also run a trust company. I have a business partner, and she's the general manager. And Commonwealth Trust Services helps real estate investors keep what they own private. But that's not the core of, I guess, our income. And
Mhm.
so we took care of the income thing. It kind of reminds me of Paul in the Bible. He was a tent maker. So he had his business generating, cash flow so he could go do his missions and ministry. I know
Yeah.
he also had benevolence from the churches he served, but I always thought about that. If you can get your income sourced in such a way that it's going to allow you to have cash flow that permits you to live the life you would choose to live if money were no object. And it's not that we're super wealthy, we're very good stewards over what we do have.
Stewardship.
And it allows us to give, not just of our money, but of our time and our talent. And time and talent are frequently much more valuable than money,
Mhm.
especially when you're in a giving situation, because
That's
you're the only one that can do what you do.
yeah. That's
I
beautiful.
yeah, I spoke at a breakfast yesterday, and I had just finished rereading The Greatest Salesman in the World.
Mm.
If you haven't read
I
it,
s Yeah, I saw you posted that book, on
yeah,
Facebook.
I did. And I opened my remarks with comments from that book, to the effect that you are a unique creation. You're a miracle, and whether it's God or nature, you choose. But no one else has ever been, is, or will be you. You get
Mm.
the distinct honor and privilege of being your own miracle. And it's how you live your life that causes that miracle to be revealed. And it's a huge thing.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack in just that short moment that you spoke on. I mean, first thing, legacy. Let's talk about legacy. You position yourself to where you are living your legacy. And normally, when people speak of legacy, folks speak like something in the future that they leave for their kids, for the future generations. But you're
Right.
speaking about living your legacy. So, if you don't mind me asking, what is the legacy that you are living?
Well, when I started my education practice, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, I had a 4-step process to teach people how to be real estate investors. And it ended at the CEO level. And I called that chief entrepreneurial officer. You'd be a transaction engineer, a marketing
Hmm.
guru, and then a business owner, and then the CEO position. And it just left something missing. And what it was, at least to me, was living your legacy. The normal thoughts of legacy is what you leave behind when you're gone.
Right.
And one of the things that I taught was profitable exit strategies. And any exit strategy that requires me to die, that just doesn't work for me. You know,
Because you're dead.
death is not a good exit strategy. I mean, when it comes, I'm ready for it. And, hopefully I'll be spending my life in a really good, my eternity in a really good place. But I thought there was something more. I raised my son, and, he asked me that question that most sons ask their dads.
Hmm.
What would make you a good father? And when I asked my dad told me, I think you should be more than me, better than me, and then have been a good dad. And my dad was a really smart guy, and he set a very high bar. And my response to my son was, I didn't want to put that pressure on him. So I said, I would be a successful dad if you would grow up and have options.
Hmm.
Whatever you want to do in life, whether it's be the president or ride on the back of a garbage truck because you like to play golf and you want to be done working by noon every day, I don't care. I really do not care. Now, my son is very successful, but he's always had options. And he's made decisions that I totally would not have made. And he has always made great decisions. So to me, that was a huge thing. And now, when it comes to legacy, there are people that don't have options,
Hmm.
or at least don't feel they have options. And you go outside of the US, and in the US, everybody's got options. They just don't always take advantage of them. They don't
Hmm.
even see sometimes the opportunities sitting right in front of them. But you go into the third world or developing countries, and there is poverty there where people are making less than $1 a day. And, it was ironic. I was in Mexico
Hmm.
and we were giving away wheelchairs. And two of the folks in our group saw our exact wheelchair in a medical supply store window.
Hmm.
Now, the same wheelchair that we get delivered to the country that's going to be receiving it and put somebody in it cost us $200. That share was selling for $1,200 US.
Oh, wow.
Now, if you're making $100 a month, that's $1,200 a year.
Yeah.
How does somebody give a year's worth of income for a wheelchair when they also have to survive? They have to
Hmm.
live, support a family, whatever the situation might be. So, the idea of living your legacy comes from being able to get up in the morning and choose how your life is going to be of service to others.
Hmm.
And I think that's, we hear about the golden rule from the time we're little kids, do unto others. And being able to do this is really powerful because when I went on my first wheelchair distribution, I thought I was going to change people's lives. I really did. I felt like a conquering hero. And when I got there, I felt like I was a wallflower. I saw all of these disabled people gathered together waiting for a wheelchair. And some of them had, been transported from 4 and 6 hours away.
Hmm.
And they were waiting when we arrived, some of them for hours and hours. And so we assembled the wheelchairs and, distributed them. But I found it very awkward. I felt like I was the guy that was the fish out of water.
Hmm.
And what I learned from that experience wasn't that I was going to change other people's lives. They changed my life.
It's
And I tell
exactly
you,
how I felt.
yeah, I know you've done mission trips and built houses for people and done amazing stuff. And to be able to do that is an honor and a privilege. It really is. And the other thing that really turned me on with this was the immediate impact that a wheelchair has on someone's life. Because you can literally pick someone up who has crawled their entire life
Mm,
in these, different economies, and you put them in a wheelchair, and you have given them freedom, dignity, hope, and that moment instantaneously, their life has changed like that.
yeah.
And that really, really hit me like a ton of bricks. So I came back, from that first trip kind of on fire, and I've been on fire ever since.
Every
Yeah.
nobody could put that fire out, huh?
No, no, and it's funny because, you know, people say, "Are you guys a Christian group, a Christian mission?" And I say, "We don't go to evangelize, we go to serve."
Mm,
There's an expression that I heard once. It's attributed to St. Francis of Assisi,
hmm
and it's, live the gospel, use words when necessary.
mm
And so we're trying to show, God's love through these wheelchairs. And if people ask, why do you do this? I tell them God told me to. I'm supposed to do two things
Yeah.
in life. I have to love God and I have to love you. Neither of which are easy every day, but
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to be here and I'm more than happy to do this. And so it doesn't, but if people ask, that's kind of what we tell them,
Yeah.
and we're share the love. And, First John tells us God is love. So
Mhm.
the wheelchairs really are coming because God softens people's hearts and those people donate. Because really what we're doing is we're delivering our donors' chairs. The
Yeah.
people that support us financially, they're the ones who are really giving these chairs. And so we're just the delivery mechanism. But the other cool thing that I really liked about this nonprofit is that our donors get to come with us if they want. They get to put wheelchairs together. We were just in Mexico. We gave away 100 wheelchairs, and it was great. We were like this little machine. There was a group of people unboxing chairs. There was a group putting them
Mhm.
together. There was a group inflating the tires. And then all together, when we were ready, everybody got to distribute. Everybody got to meet recipients, have a conversation, get to know them a little bit. And it was special. There's always, tears and hugs and smiles and
Yeah.
immense joy. And so it was really, every distribution is super special.
Yeah. I know, I'm not I consider myself not a big crier. Like I don't cry a lot, but ever since I got married, I've been crying a lot of time. But and one of the things, I mean, that I know for a fact when I do go to a distribution trip, which I will, I believe in 2025, we'll make it happen, Augie.
Good.
Uh, I'm gonna need like several handkerchiefs just to continue drying my tears out because I don't know. There's something about seeing people's faces, seeing the impact you make on other people's lives that just touches you differently. You know, different than money. Way different than any material possession that you may have. There's just
Hmm.
something about giving that just makes you emotional, in touch with God, that makes you feel something that you've never felt before. Like that little hole that you could never fill in your heart. That's what you feel there. And that's just my, speaking out of personal experience. But anyways,
No, that
but
Tony, you really nailed it because the very first trip that I led, we had 26 investors, real estate people,
mhm,
and it was like herding cats. I don't know that
mm,
I'd want to bring that many real estate people on a distribution again because they all kind of run in their own directions.
yeah,
But we had people with us that were churched and people that were unchurched.
mm,
And some of the unchurched folks said, "I've never felt like this before. What's going on?" I said, "Make sure you really want to know, because then I'll be more than happy to tell you." But drive you crazy here, but
Yeah.
there's a spiritual thing going on within you that you're just
Yeah.
connecting to the divine. And I don't care what you believe. I know what's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there is it is a connection to something that is so much greater than us, and it's powerful. It is very,
Mm.
very powerful.
Yeah, it really is. One more thing to touch on what you've spoke on briefly. You translated, or you're not translated. You stopped speaking more about fundraising money, and you transition to speaking more. Let's donate chairs. Let's fundraise for chairs, and that completely changed your weekend. That fundraising weekend,
Hmm.
which honestly, I mean, I've never seen it that way. Honestly, I mean, I've not seen you do it, but I've
Right.
never seen, when you speak fundraising, if you translate it into the physical things, it helps people understand why they're doing it. Um,
Right. Well, the other thing that we've learned too is, a wheelchair is now $200. When I first started, it was, you know, quite a number of years ago,
mhm,
the chairs were $150. Now, a container, because that's what we normally purchase, is a shipping container, because chairs are manufactured. They're placed in a container on a ship and then delivered to the port of the receiving country.
mhm,
And why counting chairs makes a difference? If someone was going to donate $100, well, if they know that they can, for another $100, they can buy a whole wheelchair, it's an incentive for people to give sometimes a little
yeah,
bit more.
a little
Or
bit
if I
more,
was going to donate $500, why don't I round it up to six and make it an even three wheelchairs?
or even with you, I would say. I mean, what's the founder's name? I forgot. Glenn, you said.
Glenn Mather,
Glenn,
yeah.
Glenn challenge you as an investor, as a go getter. Glenn challenged you to stop thinking chair wise, now think container wise, and he
Oh yeah,
challenged your.
yeah, yeah. And then after I did that, he started this thing called the Container Club in my
I
eye.
saw.
So we have a bunch of people who they commit to raising at least one container a year,
Mm,
and so it's been kind of remarkable what
yeah,
we've been able to accomplish.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, you I mean you never know. I mean the power of your mind. Again, if you think big, you will achieve it eventually, and you did that within a week. So
Yeah,
that's
that,
amazing.
that was pretty amazing. But now we're doing, we're these auctions at real estate events
Mm-hmm.
where we've raised six figures. and
Mm-hmm.
and and it was funny when I did my first one, I had no idea what I'm going into like a black hole here. When we walked out to do the auction, I said, God, whatever you want to happen, it'll happen. And it literally started less than 2 years ago when we did our first,
Yeah,
and we raised $40,000
that's
on a
unbelievable.
real estate investor cruise. And I have to give shout outs to Peggy Zurcher and
Yep.
Tom Nardone, because it was their cruise,
Mm-hmm.
the Investor Addicts, and I was just blown away. People were so generous. I mean, both the speakers and the other folks that donated, items for the auction,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then the bidders. And I had help, from other folks that were on the cruise with us, other real estate folks, and they were prompting people and pitting people against each other. Oh, you can raise your bid, and it was a great deal of fun, but it was fun for a great purpose.
Yeah.
And so we've continued doing those. And Jim Ingersoll, you talked about Dealmaker. I mean, that was another spectacular event. The first year, I lost my ponytail.
You did. Yeah, that was a bet.
Yeah, we had gotten to about $80,000, and he said, "So, look, how much do we have to raise to get your ponytail?" Because I hadn't had a haircut since COVID started. That was a whole different story. And I never had long hair before COVID. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll do that on another episode. But at Jim's event, I said, you want my ponytail? Let's raise $100,000 and you can have it. And we did.
We did.
The,
I was
the,
there. Yeah.
Much to my amazement and joy, I was happy to give it up, but not as happy as my wife was. I had called her and said, "Yeah, I told them if they can raise $100,000, I'll they can have my ponytail. And she said, "Where do I send the check?" I said, "No, no, 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 sweetheart. We can give that money, but look, we're trying to get new donors. We need new blood." So anyway, so yeah, I lost my ponytail. You know, you probably saw it on Facebook about a year or so
Hmm.
ago, and yeah, it was
For a
kind of
beautiful
fun.
cause.
Yeah, yeah. And so I said, "Hey, honey, another 3 years, I could do this again." She goes, "No, no, no."
Yep, yep.
She did not like my
Uh,
long hair, and to be honest, it was a lot of work. I don't know
yeah, yeah, no,
how folks do it.
I mean, I love the way you guys do that, and I mean, talk about a giving community. This is why I love the community that we're a part of,
Yeah.
because it's like we come in unison together at
Hmm.
this event. Because it's not just 2 to 3 folks donating. No, we're talking more than 30 folks putting efforts, and more than that, actually, way more than
Oh
that. I
yeah.
mean, you probably have the right count, but everybody is coming together to raise wheelchairs for people. Um, I
Yes.
I think it was is one of the most powerful things I've ever seen when we did that portion of the event.
And one of the other things that's come out of it isn't just people buying stuff at an auction, but people have volunteered. We are now
Hmm.
building a network of volunteers across the country because we started out very small. It took us 2 years to raise our very first container.
Wow,
And then we did a trip, delivered the container. And this is even before I was, intimately involved. And then 2 years for the second container. And
wow.
then I went on a distribution trip, got hooked, and now I started raising money through my events because I realized as an individual, there's only so much you can do.
Hmm.
But if you invite others to the party, amazing things can happen.
Hmm.
And so the other benefit that we've gotten is we've gotten some people who have become monthly donors. So they're ongoing supporters. And we've got people that donate anywhere from one wheelchair a year that way, $18 or thereabouts a month, up to somebody who I met this January at an event, and they're donating $1,000 a month.
Hmm.
And I got to be honest, man, that moves the needle. And
Absolutely.
and to put it in perspective, in 2023, we delivered 3,300 wheelchairs in
Wow.
9 countries on 4 continents.
Wow.
So
That's
from
amazing.
2 years to raise one wheelchair to 12 containers in a year.
Wow.
I mean, that was amazing. And next year, my goal is to deliver 5,000 wheelchairs.
Wow.
So
And I
that's
know
my
you can
goal.
do it.
I don't know that
Yeah.
it's our board's goal, but I always have my own personal special goals,
Yeah.
and because the need globally is for 100 million wheelchairs,
Mm.
it's a monstrous need, and
So that's an actual stat of like how many wheelchairs are needed
yeah,
in the
that
entire
comes
world.
from the World Health Organization.
Yeah.
That's their estimate,
Gotcha.
uh,
Wow. That's
and
how, no,
it's
sorry.
just
Go ahead. I'll let you finish. Yeah.
because you have to think in terms of polio still exists in the world, which
Hmm.
I didn't know until I asked a girl, "Why do you need a wheelchair?" And she said, "Because I have polio. I never felt so ignorant in my life."
Hmm.
Um, Spinal cord injuries are a big thing, and cars are not as popular in third world countries, but there's lots and lots of scooters. And man, you get in an accident on a scooter,
Yeah.
it's not pretty. And a lot of birth defects. We see a lot of cerebral palsy, due to oxygen deprivation during birth. Um, we see a lot of situations with amputations, diabetes in Latin America, especially because people consume a lot of soft drinks
Yep.
that are not diet. They're not, like zero sugar. And, some of the advertising and marketing is, be like a rich American and drink, pick your brand.
Hmm.
And that has caused lots of diabetes, and diabetes causes lots of amputation because it seems like amputation is easier than education.
Mm.
And especially a lot of these populations, relatively low literacy rates.
Yeah.
So even educating is tough. Even if there was a motivation to educate for better health practices.
Yeah.
So the needs are
Yeah.
all
The needs are, and that's where something that I always say, like here in the United States, we have a lot of support. I mean, if you need a wheelchair, I'm pretty sure there's some other. If you don't have any insurance or anything, there's some type of way that the government can help get you a wheelchair. But it's not the same for, uh, countries that in Central America or countries in Africa, the
right.
Caribbean, and things of that sort.
Hmm.
But but yeah. So
Well, you can
speaking of
even
that,
find wheelchairs here in like a
yeah,
Goodwill store for 25 bucks.
exactly, in a thrift
You
store.
know,
Yep. Yep.
so it's kind of wild.
Yeah. So speaking of that, so you mentioned something in one of the conferences. I think it was Southern Charm here in down in Huntsville. That when you donate a wheelchair, you're not just impacting one life, which we're talking about the person that is gifted the
Hmm.
wheelchair. We're impacting a whole family. So what do you mean by that?
Well, the most overlooked folks many times are the caregivers.
Mm,
And I met this one woman in Nicaragua. She carried her 17-year-old son. Now, he was thin, but he was still a grown man. He was
yeah, probably
5'10", 5'11", and
100 plus
she
pounds,
carried
something.
him about half a mile to bring him to receive a wheelchair.
Wow.
Now, she's been carrying him since birth. And there are people that we've met that have waited 30 years for a wheelchair. And so think if you were to have a family of, with kids and one is disabled, who is going to get the majority of the attention? The disabled child, which means the other kids don't get the same level of attention.
Mm,
And the other kids also have to pay attention, more attention to this disabled sibling. And you've also got the situation of if this individual can get medical care, it's a burden getting them places. It's so you've got a whole network of people that support a disabled person, hopefully, and every one of them gets a benefit. If I can share a quick story,
yeah, please.
um, on that very first distribution trip, we went to Guatemala, and it was the
Hmm.
second day of the trip. We were on a big bus. When we travel well. We air conditioned buses. We stay in nice hotels. It's very safe. We usually work with NGOs like a Rotary Club or a church
Hmm.
organization or another nonprofit who handle the logistics in country, and they're with us all the time. They
Hmm.
pick us up in the morning, they put us to bed at night, and we stay in nice hotels. So the trips are good, they're safe, they're comfortable.
Hmm.
But we're on this big bus. We're about 2 hours outside of Guatemala City, and we're going to this little clinic. We finally arrive, and as the door opens, we're marching out, and there's 200 people
Hmm.
in this little courtyard of this clinic where we're going to give away about 80 wheelchairs.
Wow.
And this uproarious ovation comes about, and people are applauding and cheering, and it was embarrassing, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, so our team goes to work. We're assembling wheelchairs, we're staging them and doing all the things that we need to do. And then we start distributing the wheelchairs. It was an amazing event. I was crying most of the morning, and just because it was just so impactful on me. And because there were so many people, you really didn't get a chance to talk to everybody as you would at smaller distributions where we'll do like 30 or 40 chairs, then go to another town and do 30 or 40 chairs. And so um, the very last recipient was this fellow, Antonio.
Mm.
And he was carried by his older brother. And we get Antonio his wheelchair. They're very thankful. And the day is kind of finished. And at that point, we get invited. to a luncheon prepared by our hosts at the clinic. The folks that work there, they made us this nice lunch. And so we go and we have lunch. About 90 minutes later, we're heading back to our bus. Now, this is a hot day in Guatemala.
Mm.
The middle of the day, sun's at its highest. And sitting outside the door of our bus is Antonio and his older brother. They waited an hour and a half in the sun because they didn't just want to thank whoever gave them the chair. They wanted to thank everyone in our group.
Wow.
And what made this whole thing a little unique and why I share this story is because Antonio is a double amputee. And so his brother had a unique way of, he couldn't do a fireman's carry to transport his brother, and he
Mm.
couldn't do a piggyback kind of thing to carry his brother. And his brother was a bulky guy, so even like carrying him like a barrel wouldn't work. The way they would travel is they would sit back to back, interlock their arms, and the older brother would lean forward
Wow.
until Antonio was looking at the sky, and then the brother would use his legs to lift them both, and that's how he would carry him on his
Wow.
back. And I have no idea how many years he had been carrying him. But we get to the bus, and I'm always the last one on the bus because if I leave somebody behind,
You're in trouble.
another distribution, yeah, I get in trouble. So I make sure my herd of cats have all gotten on the bus, and I'm the last one. And so, using my high school Spanish, I say to Antonio because I was curious, "¿Cuántos años tiene?" How old are you? And he said, 65. I'm
Wow.
65 years old. And it's his older brother who has been carrying him and continues to carry or continued to carry him until that
Until.
day.
Wow.
And that was 2017. So 7 years later, I'm still wondering who appreciates that wheelchair more, Antonio or his brother. And that's the idea when we talk about a wheel. It's estimated that somewhere between 8 and 10 people benefit from every single wheelchair.
Wow.
And
Uh,
so in December of 2023, we surpassed 10,000 wheelchairs, which means we may have impacted as many as 100,000 lives. That's mind boggling when you think of
yeah.
it because, Share the Love is a nonprofit, but we are a small group. I mean, until maybe the last year and a half or so, we were 4 volunteers as the board, and that was it. We now
Mhm.
have a full time staff member who is paid, but every other dollar goes to raising wheelchairs, to buying wheelchairs. We now
Mhm.
have an advisory board that's helping us to grow. And so, but still, having been able to accomplish this again is a divine experience.
Yeah.
It is a miracle unto itself. And to my friend Glenn, I just give him a lot of credit because he went on a distribution trip with a friend of his, and he got the bug.
Yeah.
And it took probably I don't know 5 7 years before he decided to form a nonprofit organization, which his company supported in our infancy.
Mhm.
And but we're now he sold that business, and so now we're a freestanding nonprofit, and it's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, just, whew, I mean, that story alone. The reason why I asked that question is because if a lot of people are like me, when I hear a wheelchair, I think of one individual, but I
Hmm.
never thought about multiple people being affected by that. Obviously, because I'm not in that situation. Um, And then the other thing too, and I think you have this on the Charity Love website. You're also helping the community because um, that person can now that they can move around, they can get a job, they can help at a church in their community, they can do things that obviously they couldn't do before to improve their life, improve
Mhm.
better the world, really, in generally speaking. So there's again, I'm glad you opened my eyes to that, because that's not how I saw it before.
Yeah,
So.
it's kind of ironic some of the responses that we get, because I always ask people, you know, what will this wheelchair do for you?
Hmm.
I know it gives you mobility, but what will it really do? It's like when you ask somebody, what do you really want? They want money. No, you don't. You want either you want freedom, you want to buy your time back, you want family, benefits. So you get to the underlying reasons.
Hmm.
And I asked this one dad last year in Africa, in Kenya. I said, "What will this wheelchair do for you?" Because he has polio, and he can walk around on those metal crutches with the
Yep.
armbands. Um, that's got to be so brutal. And anyway, what he says to me is, I have a family of 8 children. I contracted polio as an adult. How that happened, I have no idea. But his response was, I can work more now to take better care of my family.
Mm.
I can work more. I mean, it's just not an answer I would expect. I met this young guy in Mexico, and I may have shared this story with you before, but for the folks listening, I
Please
think.
share it again.
Um, so anyway, we were doing our first nighttime distribution. It was a small group, 20 chairs, and I had just finished giving this little kid a wheelchair. And the last thing you do when you give somebody a wheelchair is you go down on one knee and you lower the footrest so you can lift their feet and put them into the footrest. And it's a really spiritual moment because you're there kind of heart to heart, eye to eye. And I just feel like the Holy Spirit is there every time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I asked this little boy his name, Como se llama? And God has such a sense of humor because it's a really emotional thing with this little kid. And he goes, Jesus. I said, oh, come on, Lord, you're like killing me here. So I stood up, I hugged him, shook his parents' hands, and I turn around, and halfway up this driveway, this was a clinic, and it was about to open the following week. And I see this guy prone on the ground, dragging himself up this hill by his elbows.
Mm.
And I screamed, "Get a wheelchair, get it!" And our folks that were on the other side of the parking lot there, they grabbed a wheelchair, came down. We met him and put him in the wheelchair. We bring him up, and we get him on, where there's some light. And
Hmm.
Glenn asks him, "What will this wheelchair do for you?" Because we always ask. And he goes, "Senor, this is not my wheelchair." The young man spoke pretty good English. "Senor,
Mm.
this is not my wheelchair." He kept telling us. "Yes, it's yours. You can keep it." He goes, "Senor, this is not my wheelchair. This is my Cadillac." And I'm telling you, man, that just busted everybody up. And but it shows you that while maybe their legs don't work,
Hmm.
everything else is firing on all cylinders. These people are smart, they're capable, they're gifted. They're some of them are artists. They work or they want to be able to work, and they just want that little hand up,
Yep.
as opposed to a hand out. They're willing to fend for themselves because they look at it as this is my life, this is who I am. I can either roll myself up in a ball and disappear, or I can still be a living, breathing human being. And if I can get a little help to where I can have some mobility, look out, I can do stuff. And that's for me been so enlightening because I have to be honest. I mean, I'm ignorant like many of us, and what you're not exposed to, you really just you form wrong opinions, wrong
Yeah.
thoughts, and many times I think it's we that are abled that have disabilities because we have blind spots. We don't always see what really is. We see what we think we see. And when
Exactly.
you get introduced to it, you see through a whole different lens.
Hmm.
And it's really eye opening.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we all
But.
are,
Hmm.
and so, one of the things I ask people to do is if you see a blind spot that I'm not seeing, please point it out,
Hmm.
you know, because ignorance is not bliss. It's just ignorance.
Yeah, yeah. You don't see what you can't see. I mean, that's really the way to put it.
Yeah.
Um, I know. Recently, about 2 months ago, we had a huge snow here in Alabama, which we don't get much snow, but it was huge. A lot of the roads were frozen, and because I was working from home, and I didn't even work out that whole week. I was sitting literally like this, pretty much, uh, probably more than 12 hours a day, and I got some pain in my spine and some pain in my leg that I could barely move. And when literally my wife had to help me get off the bed, I could barely go down this. I don't know. I always tell her, I don't know. We live in a 2-story house. I always tell my wife, I don't know why you chose to live in a 2-story house. This is horrible. Now I could barely get up and down the stairs. But it's there's a saying. I don't know how to say it in English, so I'm gonna butcher it up, but it basically says, um, "You don't know what you're missing until you lose it." I think that's the best way to put
Mhm.
it, translate it. And that's the thing, like, um, during that week, because it lasted a whole week. During that week, I lost the power of mobility.
Mhm.
The ability of moving myself around. And man, did I miss my body being healthy? Did I miss my legs being 100%?
Mhm.
That's when you realize, really, when we go through those experiences, that's when we realize how much our legs are worth, how much we've been gifted by God, to be able to move around, to be able to have our hands and things of that sort. So yeah, that happened recently, and again, it's one of those eye-opening moments that we experience, to where we need to be more thankful of what we have, and at the
Mhm.
same time, if somebody doesn't have that, that's where you need to be more helpful to provide that. So that's uh, the way I see that. So yeah, yeah. So you guys said you've been to Kenya, you've been to Nicaragua, you've been to Guatemala, you've been to Mexico.
Mhm.
Um, how do you guys arrange these trips, and how could, for those people listening, how could they possibly get involved if they ever want to go to a distribution trip?
Well, first, let me give you our website. It's
Okay.
chairthelove.org. Just the three words, chairthelove.org. And there's a tab that says distributions. And you click on that, and it'll show you where we're going. We have trips coming up to Honduras, Trinidad, Ecuador, Nicaragua, and I'm going to later this month. I leave on the 30th to go to Kenya,
Yeah.
and
And you just got back from Mexico, just what,
yeah, I
yesterday?
just got back, yeah, a couple of days ago. Yeah, uh, yeah, but I'm home for like 3 weeks now. This is really
Okay.
good.
So
But
you need to refuel yourself right there.
yeah, well, yeah, this is a little bit of wind down time because I'm going to get
Yeah.
wound up again because I'm actually going to Kenya for 3 weeks
Wow.
because we're doing two trips. The first one is sold out. That's June 1st to the 9th, but we have a second trip that's going to be covering other parts of the country, and that's going to be June 9th to June 17th.
Mm,
So if anybody wants to join us on that, um, I call these trips humanitarian adventures.
mm,
And the reason I do that is because it seems to actually make sense. I was trying to figure out what these trips really are, and voluntourism or just different names. But we get to distribute wheelchairs, and that's the humanitarian part.
mhm.
But we also get to immerse in the culture and
Yes.
natural wonders of a lot of these countries that we travel to. And so while we're in Africa, both trips are going to get to experience some safaris. And I did that for the very first time last year, and I was blown away. And this trip is kind of a really super special trip because it's the first time since Share the Love has been in existence, we're actually going to deliver not one, but two containers of wheelchairs
Wow.
to
In
a
one
country.
community.
Yes.
Wow.
And, so I remember I told you it took us 2 years to raise our first container in 2 years. And now we're bringing two containers to one country, and so it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to do Eastern Kenya and Western Kenya, and so each trip will see something different, and it's just pretty remarkable. But the way these trips come about uh, is first we raise the money
Mm-hmm.
because then we have to find a partner, and from beginning to end, it can be anywhere from 8 to 12 months to establish a distribution. So now we are actually planning our 2025 calendar,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got pretty much the calendar worked out. Now we're just working to confirm with in-country partners, and but it wasn't always that way because it used to take so long to raise one container that we didn't know where it was going to go and when it was going to go. But we work with, as I mentioned earlier, Rotary clubs and other organizations in the country
Mm-hmm.
because our job is to raise the money and to purchase the wheelchairs and then show up to help distribute the wheelchairs. Their responsibility is one, to bring the chairs through customs
Mm-hmm.
because most of them are nonprofits as well. And because it's humanitarian aid, they can bring them in without paying duty. Sometimes they do have to pay duty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, but their job is really to identify the recipients. And the recipients have to meet certain requirements. It's got to be a permanent disability,
Right.
number one. Number two, each recipient or their guardian has to sign an agreement that this chair will not be sold and that if the recipient no longer needs it, either because they've been cured or they
Mm-hmm.
pass on, that that chair will be returned to be redeployed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're trying to be really good stewards with our donor dollars. And so they also bring the chairs in through customs, as I mentioned, but then they have to stage them because we typically go to three, four, five, sometimes six, seven, or eight different locations to do the
Mm-hmm.
distributions over what could be as short as a 4 day period to a 9 or 10 day period, depending on where we go.
Mm-hmm.
We've done trips to the Philippines, to Vietnam. On those longer trips, you're also going to spend more time in country because you want to see more. Peru is an
Right.
example. We were there. We're actually going to Peru later this year in October, I think it is. And so once the distributions are completed, folks are going to hop on a plane and fly to Cusco and be able to visit Machu Picchu and Sacred
Mm-hmm.
Valley. And you don't travel that far and not go see something spectacular. So our in-country partners work with churches, the health department, social workers, clinics, hospitals, therapy centers to identify people in need.
Right.
And we've been finding lately the health departments are particularly good at helping because they know the people that are hidden.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that, in many of these cultures, being disabled carries a stigma that affects the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the great unseen because they never get out of their room or they're out of their house. Their house might only be one room.
Yeah.
We've done some in-home deliveries over the years, and to see where these people live and the conditions in which they live is truly heartbreaking. But having mobility does give them hope,
Mm-hmm.
and that hope is a huge thing. And so that's kind of the process. Um, and the reason that it takes as long as it does is because they need to find at least 80% of the recipients so we know the right chair size.
Yeah.
And then the rest will just kind of do a blend. So they need to identify recipients. Now those recipients have to wait for a wheelchair, sometimes almost a year after knowing that they're or knowing that they're on the list, and that's got to be a tough situation. And I've got a video that I will send to you. And it was in our trip to Africa, and we actually had our friends in Kenya interview some people before they received their chairs, and then
Mm.
we got to interview them a little bit after they received their chairs. And this one woman said, "If my son gets this chair, they don't have a full sense of belief that they're going to receive the wheelchair, even though they've been interviewed and told you're going to get a wheelchair, because many times governments will say we're going to do something for you,
Mm.
they get elected, and then they don't do it. So they've gotten promises before that have not been delivered on. We were in Nicaragua
Hmm.
last the beginning of December, um, and we got to our very last distribution. And when we came walking in, this one-legged woman jumps up on her crutch. There's all this great Latin music playing, and she starts dancing.
With one leg.
One leg. To see this one-legged woman dancing around on her crutch, she was like a wild woman. It was such a joy to see. She was smile. She was so happy because again, our getting off the bus was validation that she was getting a wheelchair.
Yeah, yeah. That was her. I mean, similar moment probably. She's
Yeah,
been promised a lot that she will get one, but
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And so it was really special. So to be able to do this for people, I'm telling you, it's like guilty pleasure for me to
Yeah.
see the joy that people get to experience because we can bring them a wheelchair, which for them is both priceless and life changing.
Yep, yep. It's priceless, just like you said. I mean, it's one of those. Just like you said, it's well. There's two things that you said that really uh, touched me as well, and one of them is um geez, hold on, I lost my train of thought. It was two things. I'm trying to bring it back in my head. Um, geez, Augie, I lost my train of thought. I had two things that you mentioned that I wanted to ponder on, and I completely lost
Well,
them just
that's
now.
right. Because we did talk about, people have an expectation and
Hmm.
they've had the expectation that's gone unmet before.
Oh,
You know,
yes, yes, and I remember that. So, like, one of them was you seeing that lady uh, dance with one leg. I mean,
yeah,
seeing the joy in her just makes you smile. Just it fills you up entirely because you
yeah,
see, especially in the situation, in the conditions that they live, they're
hmm
still smiling, being joyful. Uh, 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 I think that's something that again, going to the spiritual world where like everything we have here is material. Really, the joy you feel inside, that's something that it goes beyond that.
hmm
And I think that's huge. um Now, Augie, for you, I know you have a mission, um which is to aid others in creating prosperity and leaving a meaningful impact. I saw that in your bio.
okay.
Now, can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think we can't do everything.
Hmm.
And one of the things I like to tell people when I get to speak is that, you know, nobody thinks they can change the world, but everyone has the capacity to change someone's world.
Mm.
And as an example, one of the things I'm trying to do is create a grassroots program across the country.
Oh, what
And
now?
I
I'm
want to
sorry.
get, I'm trying to create a grassroots program across the country.
Okay.
I'd like 10,000 families to support us with $18 a month.
Mm.
But I want the kids to participate, even if it's a nickel or a quarter or what a dollar, and the parents can supplement the rest. And the reason I say that is we need to teach the next generation that there's joy in giving, especially in situations where there's no chance of getting something in return that's material.
Hmm.
Even scripture says, why do you invite the people to dinner who can invite you back? Invite those that can't. Care for the
Okay. Yep.
poor. Matthew 25, I preached on that recently. And, when you do it for the least of these, you do it for the
Yeah,
Lord.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a powerful thing because what we get in return so far outweighs what we give. And the reason for 10,000 families to do this is because some of them will tell other families, and some of them will tell other families, and maybe
Hmm.
it'll become a school project, and or a church project, or a Sunday school project, or whatever. And the idea being that if we had the capacity and capability, because right now most of our donations come from events, some corporate sponsorships, but it's
Hmm.
very difficult to budget. But if we had a bunch of small donations coming in consistently that, you know,
It's a game changer.
that compounded, I'm an investor, compound interest, Thomas was Edison, no, some really smart guy said, the most powerful force in the universe, Albert Einstein,
Albert Einstein. Yeah, that was.
compound interest. And this compounding effect could give us a baseline that we could budget, we could grow the organization in such a way that we can serve more and more people. We're
Mhm.
not going to be able to change everybody's world. We won't, unless I can get somebody to write a $20 billion check. Elon, if you're watching, help. I know
he's he,
you
he's
and a
an all
couple of
time
buddies. You and a couple of
he's an all
buddies.
time listener. He listens to this podcast all the time, so I'm sure he'll.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Good. Okay. And I know there's other folks out there that will listen to this that have, family foundations and family trusts and that kind of stuff. And we are one of the most efficient nonprofits I have ever seen. And it's because we're all volunteers and everything gets focused on buying chairs and, butts in seats. I used to think
Mhm.
about butts in seats when I was trying to fill training events. Now butts in seats has a whole different meaning. And and now I want to put more butts in seats than I wanted to even at my own events. And if you own a business, I started a thing, if you're a real estate investor that watches, I started a thing called the Real Estate Challenge. If you
Mhm.
do a deal, donate a wheelchair. You have a
Yeah.
successful closing. It gets lost in the rounding on a settlement statement, but that $200 changes up to 10 lives.
Yeah.
Imagine going to the next, real estate meetup and saying, "Yeah, what did you do this month?" "Oh, I changed 10 lives." "Oh, I had two closings. I changed 20." And have fun with it, but it really does make a difference.
I'm
And
gonna make this into a clip to put into social media so we can share it on Facebook to our fellow investors that we know.
all
Because
right,
I mean,
cool.
yeah, this is something powerful. I mean, you got me now. You challenged me, so now in my next closing, guess what? You better expect 20 wheelchairs donated because I
All
now
right,
that I yeah now that you started something now, Augie. Now I'm gonna
good.
we're gonna have to create a challenge. You know how they did the ice bucket challenge? They did
Yes,
the
exactly.
you know what? We should start a closing challenge, a wheelchair closing
That's
challenge.
it. Yep. And the title company, they can be invited to kick in one too, because we know
Yeah.
they're making more than 200 on the closing. And private lenders, come on, you guys collect points, add $200 to the transaction fee.
I think we're starting something here, Augie.
We'll light it up, light it on fire. Because I'm telling you, we need to have a mobility movement in this country. Because if we can afford to give, $95 billion in guns and bullets to other countries, what if we started firing wheelchairs at them
Hmm.
and medical assistance? What could happen?
Yeah,
We've got a global series of issues going on right now, and there's a lot of them that could be dealt with much more effectively.
absolutely.
I think by serving people around the world in a positive way, not, you know, weakening them, not enabling them, but empowering them, that's how you make a difference in the world. And that's
Mhm.
potentially how we as a nation could change the world. But I don't want to
Absolutely.
get on a political soapbox here. I want to stick on $18 a month or a two or a wheelchair, per deal, because it's in the weeds where this stuff gets done. It's not
Hmm.
at the big macro level. I sit on the board, and we talk about things, but my favorite place to be is in some little clinic somewhere or some little churchyard somewhere, and just picking up somebody and putting them in a wheelchair,
Yeah,
and giving them a hug and letting them know God loves them and I love them too.
yeah. I know
Not even
something.
not even because God said so.
That
Because
is,
when he gets in your heart, you just do it naturally.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
exactly. It comes
I
out
think in the
natural.
beginning I did it under duress. He just kept. He's persistent,
Yeah,
and so
it's like similar to like Paul. He's gonna get to you
yeah,
somehow.
yeah.
Saint
Well,
Paul,
he
yeah.
got God, so
But
yeah.
something I like, Mark and Cindy, which we've worked with San Miguel Archangel Missions, and you've
Hmm.
actually helped us with a wheelchair as well, because they actually we're the 1st of May today. They're actually the clinic is actually opening in a couple of days.
That's
Actually,
great.
anyways, but something Mark says that I really love. He says we can't do everything, but we can do something.
Amen.
And what I understand by that is like, yeah, we can't change the world right away, but like you mentioned, we can change somebody's world
Right.
just by doing something simple. Um, but yeah, and the fact that a lot of nonprofits organizations are working together, with the Rotary Club, you helping us with San Miguel Archangel Missions.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it's again, a lot of companies that do joint ventures, they do partnerships, but man, I think there is power when nonprofits combine to make the world a better
Work
place.
together. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And on that subject, we are working with a number of businesses that are looking to do corporate trips, where it becomes part of their culture to give back.
Mm.
And, it's a great way to do leadership sessions, because do a 3-day distribution and a 3-day offsite. And so there's lots of ways that we can work with folks. Um, if you have interest in doing something like that, you can always reach me, Augie Byllott, AUGIE BYLLOTT, at gmail.com is my personal email. You can call me. I get lots of phone calls. So, and you can reach me at 863-662-9429. If you're watching this from somewhere outside the US, I'm on WhatsApp. So you don't even have to put a nickel in the machine. Yeah, that's how old I am. No,
And-
I don't remember the phone calls, but I do remember a dime. So, but
I,
anyway, yeah,
I'll
just
put this in. I'll put this information in the show notes. So if you are driving or anything, just come back to the link to the episode, and you will see Augie's information, um, to where you can contact him. And if you can't find it, just contact me if you know me, and I'll get you his information, for anything that anybody needs. So yeah, thank you, Augie, for putting your personal information. I mean, that's huge. That's
yeah,
huge.
well, look, this
Y-
this is this is a thing that is near and dear to my heart, and we're we have big goals, big
Yeah.
aspirations, because the need is great and the workers are few.
Yeah,
But
Elon Musk might give you a call. Just letting you know.
well, yeah, if Elon calls, and Elon, if I'm on the other line, I will get back to you very quickly. Do not worry. But that's my personal cell. So
Hmm.
I'm happy to help, and if you want to come on a trip, like I said, visit the website, check out the distributions link. We'd love to have you. I love having people come on distributions with us. They are life changing experiences, and we try to make them affordable. And basically, the way we structure them, if anyone's interested, is there's a price to join the distribution, and that basically covers all of your in-country transport, your lodging, the majority of meals,
Hmm.
and you want to. The only thing you're really responsible for outside of that expense is your airfare.
Right,
So,
because that
and
that varies upon location.
yeah, exactly. So we can't really package that in, but we'd love to have you come and join us. And Tony, I can't
Definitely.
wait until you come and join us on a trip.
I can't wait either. I'm telling you, I know it's gonna be tears all over my eyes. I need to before I go. I need to like prep myself because I know you don't understand, Augie.
No, no, you don't have to prep yourself. You just go and let it flow. I'm telling you,
Oh, it's gonna flow, all right.
it will. I know. I know. I have friends that have now been on multiple trips, and they say, when do the tears stop? I tell them, long after you're dead, probably, because all that shows is you've got a heart, you've got compassion.
Hmm.
And you also have to understand in the beginning, there are tears because you feel sympathy or empathy.
Hmm.
But later they become tears of joy because you now see the hope and possibility that you've just given someone and you're sharing in their tears of joy because they
Hmm.
cry too. I mean, they're sitting in that chair they just got and they still don't believe it. It takes a while for it to sink in. And that's really powerful.
Hmm.
So, you know, that's our
Man,
that's our story.
yeah, yeah, and you'll see me. You'll see me in 2025. Again, that's one thing too. So one of my purposes is to retire from my W-2 job to be able to do this, you know, full time. Just like similar to you, what you're doing now. I mean, you're able to do, well, I'm assuming about five, 5 to 8 trips a year or more than that. Um,
Yeah, I probably do. I'm trying to regulate it, honestly, because I do a lot of fundraising too.
yeah.
So, and those involve trips. So I'm trying to do 4 to 6 distributions a year, and
Hmm.
then 4 to 6 fundraising
Events.
activities a year. So I'm kind of traveling most months, at least once,
Hmm.
sometimes twice, sometimes a little more. But it's it's a wonderful way to see the world.
Yeah.
It's a great way to travel. It's travel with a purpose. And, you know, there's a lot of travel that's, circulated around self indulgence. Well, this is a gift you can give yourself that is probably more indulgent than you can ever imagine. You're not going to get pampered, but you'll be well fed. You will sleep well, and you will see things that you never thought you might see,
Oh yeah.
both in terms of the humanitarian side and the adventure side.
Hmm.
So these
And
are,
that's the
I've
thing. So,
seen, I've climbed pyramids. I've done I met a guy, where were we? Belize, I think it was, that
hmm.
in his youth, he was now in his 70s, and we were presenting him a wheelchair because he could no
Hmm.
longer walk. And he and a buddy climbed into a cave when they were like in their teens
Hmm.
and they discovered a 9-pound jade.
Wow. Wow.
And the government promptly took it from them,
Yeah,
but it's on
probably.
display somewhere, and but there's an article about him that, it's crazy. And then, we met a boxing champion, that now I guess because, he's got Parkinson's and so he needs a wheelchair. But the people that you get to meet were not necessarily always disabled. And they have very interesting lives. And then you've got some that were born disabled, and to them, they're not disabled at all. This is just me.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the people that you get to meet, they're very inspiring too.
And that's where, like I say, it's not just about giving a wheelchair. It's not just about building a home for somebody in need. It's about getting to interact, getting to know the people, getting fully
Yeah.
immersed in the culture. I mean, I just interviewed Mark and Cindy recently. We were just talking about this. Like, you getting to know the people is really where the magic happens.
Hmm.
Because you learn so much. You get to, me personally, when I go to on vacation with me and my wife, I try not to eat in the touristy area either. Like I like to go out of there to meet the people, taste the real food, the
Hmm.
authentic food, and that's honest. I mean, yeah, that's another way to travel the world. I mean, again, when you go to tourist places, they make it U.S. like a lot, but when you
Yeah.
actually get to go outside of that, that's where you see the real, the actual culture, and that's one of the most, I mean, one of the most loving things, just getting to know the people and talking to the
Hmm.
people. Well, we're almost wrapping it up. Augie, so the podcast is called Wealth with Purpose. and it has multiple meanings to the word wealth, because I think you're dedicating you're a very successful investor, and you're not only just putting your money donated for the better of the world, but you're putting your time, um, which is something
Mhm.
huge. So, what can you tell to those other investors, retiree, or regular employees like like me? What can you tell those people as to how they can put their wealth to better use?
One is start now.
Mm,
Wherever you are, okay, find something you believe in that serves others and give $5 a month, give $10 a month. Increase it as your income increases. Because one thing that's difficult, I know, is that if you never develop the habit of giving and say, I'll wait until I'm making six figures and then I'll tithe to my church,
mm.
they will be pulling that $10,000 check out of your cold dead hand.
Yeah.
Because unless you build that generosity muscle, it will atrophy, it will shrink and go away. So start building that muscle now.
Mhm,
Think about how you use your time. If you have 1 hour a week to give away, could you donate it to working with a child or visiting a nursing home?
mm.
There are some people in nursing homes that never have a visitor.
Yep.
I served in a 350-bed nursing home for a few years after I became a deacon. This is about 25 years, 30 years ago. And it was shocking how many people end up put away and there's just no visitors.
Mm.
And you would be surprised. You could be changing lives today, and it cost you an hour of your time.
Of your time. Yep.
Okay? Volunteer to clean up a road. You know, do something. Because if everybody did something, because there's so many people that do nothing, if they just did something, the compound effect of that would be
Oh yeah.
amazing.
Oh
It
yeah.
would be amazing. So that's where I would encourage people to start. I mean, if you already have means, well, think about if you were writing your epitaph, if you were writing your obituary, what would you want to be in that obituary?
Mm.
You know, if I could have just two words in my obituary, it would be he helped.
Mm.
That's all. And if we can do that, it's going to have a positive impact, not only on those you serve, but the impact will come slamming back at you in ways you can't even imagine.
Mhm.
It's like give and it will be given to you 10 times over and stamped down and, overflowing. I'm telling you, that's exactly what happens. It's
Mhm.
exactly what happens. And so, they say you can't outgive God. I'm going to try.
I'm gonna.
Okay.
I like that.
Okay. Because I know I can't, but I can do a little better every day.
Mhm.
And that way, someday in the future, when I'm no longer here, somebody might say, hey, he helped.
Mhm.
And that's enough. So,
Yeah. Whew, man, Augie, you got me on fire today. I'm fired up.
well, Tony, I thank you so much for having me on your show. I think it's awesome. I love the work that you're doing. I love the nonprofit work that you're doing. I love the real estate work that you're doing. And brother, I am always here for you. If I
Thank you
can
very
help or
much,
serve
Augie.
you in any way, you just ask.
Well, thank you,
You
bro. I
know,
mean,
I,
you're
I've,
already
been, I've been around a long time. I've made about as many mistakes as the person has a right to. So maybe I can help you avoid some.
no, you're
But
already. I mean, like I
I
said, I
really
look up
appreciate
to
the
you.
opportunity.
No, no, absolutely. You've helped me tremendously already. I mean, in many ways, I could already. I don't even have to tell them in here, but Yeah, you already helped me tremendously, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, I look up to you in a lot of things. And again, you're a person that I want to be like you when I grow up. You know, it's one of those.
Well, I don't want to grow up. I just want to grow. But oh, if I could do one more shameless plug,
Please, please.
I have a book coming out very soon called Act Two, from success to significance,
Okay, when is it
and
coming out?
it's going to be on Amazon, and it should be out by next week.
Oh,
So if
perfect.
you just
Because
go into
actually,
Amazon and put in Augie Byllott books, it will hopefully pop up because I have to.
okay,
Looking to get
no,
it
absolutely.
on. It'll be Kindle and paperback,
What
and
I'll do,
all of the proceeds of all of my books go to Share the Love.
okay, awesome. So I'll share that in the comments
Cool.
below in the show comments, so everybody can have a link to that. And you heard it, all the proceeds go to Chair the Love. So even if you're
Make it
not
a
a
bestseller.
exactly, we need to make it a bestseller. Well, thank you everybody for listening in. This has been awesome. Again, I was quiet most of the time because I'm just here pondering the information that you're saying, Augie. And please be sure to visit chairthelove.org. That's chair, CHAIR, thelove.org. And please, you already, Augie's information will be in the show notes. So if you want to contact Augie, please do. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope everybody has a blessed week. And this episode was supposed to go live May 6th, so which is the same day that your book is
Yeah, pretty
going to be
much.
on Amazon.
Yep.
So,
And also my 35th wedding anniversary.
oh man, congratulations, early
26, big
congratulations.
day.
That's, I know your wife is happy,
She's
but
the happiest grandma you're ever going to meet. She's with her grandson in New York right now, babysitting. So she's very happy.
well, thank you, Augie, again for joining me. This has been again amazing, and I hope we can bless as many lives as we can with this episode. All right, see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.